Hello and welcome to the Internal Comms podcast with me, Katie McCauley. This is a show devoted to exploring how we can better inform, involve and energise our employees. I am super excited about this episode. We have in the studio Martin Flegg and Kevin Ruck. They are the authors of a brand new revised, updated edition of this book, Exploring Internal Communication. Great subtitle, which I love, Towards Dialogue in the Workplace. So let's dive straight in. So welcome, Kevin. Welcome, Martin, to the Internal Comms podcast. I know you've been on the show before, but the first time in our lovely studio.
Oh, it's lovely.
Martin, let's start with you. This is the 5th edition of the book. The first edition was published in 2020. We're now in 2026. There's some obvious headlines around what's changed over that time, the impact of the pandemic, hybrid work, AI. But my first question to you is, fundamentally, on a strategic level, what do you think the biggest change has been over that time?
Great question. I mean, we talk a lot about hybrid work and the impact that that's had and the need to communicate with all employees wherever they are. But I think just generally the headline running through all of that is this increased complexity in organisations these days. And I think that's because of all the external influences that we've got, impacting on organisations and this need for them to constantly adapt to what's going on in the wider world. So, change is an obvious one.
Yes.
But I also think that the nature of the employee-employer relationship has changed. I think there's something that's around trust.
Yes.
It's just not there anymore. I think in a lot of organisations, there's perhaps quite a bit of casualisation in workforces.
Yes.
People don't tend to stay around for a long time in organisations these days. Perhaps the economic situation now will change that a little bit.
Yeah.
But I just think that generally is that employees don't have the affiliation to the employer that they used to have because they don't work there for that long anymore.
Yeah.
It's something that I've noticed. I've been back in house now on a contract for about 14 months now. And I've just noticed that I think employees are a lot more willing to speak up and challenge and to really push back on things that they either don't agree with or they don't understand or fundamentally that they just don't buy into. So they're much more willing, I think, to challenge leaders. And I think from a leadership point of view, that's a real issue that leaders need to address these days. Is they need to work out how to deal with that challenge in a constructive way and not get all defensive about it.
Are you a little bit negative then about the relationship between the employer and the employee?
I don't think I'm negative about the
You're
relationship.
A skeptic, though.
I'm a skeptic, as you know, fully paid up skeptic. But I think there's something about leadership these days, and and I think probably Kevin agrees here that I think leadership just needs to step up a little bit more, and they need to really think about employees as people. I know that sounds a bit daft.
No, it doesn't.
But they need to think about employees as people, not just numbers on a spreadsheet or a pay grade or something like that. So, I'm not negative about the relationship. I'm more negative about the reaction perhaps that leaders have and their ability to be able to cope with that.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting, the world that we live in now and the demands that are placed on leaders in particular.
The other thing I think that, and again, this is part of the impact of the pandemic and hybrid working is just the dominance of digital. Now, digital is a huge challenge for comms teams because I think it kind of, some would say it empowers comms teams because it's so ubiquitous, it's so easy to use, but I also think it restricts us as well. So there's a ubiquity of certain platforms in organisations these days. Everybody's kind of got the same thing. It kind of works in the same way. I think that stifles a little bit of creativity and innovation, because, you know, you've only got these options to kind of work with. But also, it's just that technology has increased the pace of communication exponentially.
Yes.
So comms teams are having to cope with a lot more demand, because internal stakeholders know that this stuff exists.
Yes.
Back in the day, when I first started in internal comms, you know, one of the first conversations that you'd often have with a stakeholder about, you know, communicating something was you'd explain the channels that were available to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Because perhaps those weren't quite as visible as you know, as they are today. But now everybody's using this technology. They can see the capability of it. So, they want it now.
They want it now.
Want it now. I mean, they've always wanted it now, right?
Yeah.
But they want it now.
Yes, exactly.
That increases the pressure, I think, on internal comms people particularly.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin, I'm going to abuse the fact that we've got an academic in the house and ask you a really big, slightly philosophical question, I guess. If someone forced you to answer in 1 or 2 sentences this question, what would you say? What is internal communication for?
Ooh, great question.
I love a question like that. That's something that an academic could write a whole thesis on.
Exactly.
So I'm going to try and avoid the tendency to sort of go into academic speak and just say it's about belongingness.
Ah, okay. So let me think this through, because that's nowhere near where I was going to go. But are you saying belongingness because when you feel you belong, certain things happen as a result? Is that where you're going with this?
Yeah, I think belongingness is at the the heart of it. If an employee feels they belong in the organisation where they are, you kind of think, well, that means they must have some kind of affinity with the purpose.
Yes.
You can't really belong somewhere if you don't feel that organisation's purpose has meaning for you.
Yes.
So that then begs the question, how does internal communication focus and base itself around purpose? But belongingness also has other aspects to it.
Yes.
So it's but I think at the heart of it, employees want to belong at the organisation. And if you want to understand how belongingness comes about, then I think that you can say internal communication plays a very strong part in that process.
Yes. Perfect.
And if I'm going to be academic...
Go on, please do. Let's get nerdy.
There's plenty of research out there into what is known as the employee-organisation relationship. EOR it's called in the academic world, and Martin's already touched on relationships, and I think that's where we ought to be talking when it comes to internal communication. So this concept, the employee-organisation relationship, has been heavily studied by academics, mainly in the US actually, and so they've done studies with hundreds of employees using questionnaires, asking them about their satisfaction with internal communication and asking them about the nature of the relationship they have with their organisation. And, numerous studies have now found correlations between internal communication and the employee-organisation relationship. Okay, so I know you're going to tell me a correlation is not a causation.
No, exactly.
So, which is absolutely true. And, there are many more things that play into an employee's relationship with their organisation that are not just internal communication based. However, it's very clear that internal communication is a fundamental enabler of an employee feeling that they belong in the organisation where they are.
Yeah.
And it's about values too. Does the organisation's values resonate with an employee's own personal values?
Yes.
And then how does the leadership team live up to those values? How does their line manager or supervisor enact those values? How does the senior leadership team talk about the purpose of the organisation and make that meaningful to employees in the work they do in their team that week? And how does that then connect to the way that the leadership team talks about the organisation's strategy and how it's working towards achieving its purpose? the plans it might have and the updates on those plans, the progress against them.
Yeah.
That's, a much longer answer to the question. But I think at the heart of it, it comes back to helping an employee to feel that they belong.
Yeah.
And, there are other aspects, mutual support from other team members. There are many more aspects to belongingness.
Yeah.
But, you can connect it to well-being, identification with the organisation as well.
Yeah.
But, internal communication is a big enabler of a lot of things.
Yeah.
And we don't always talk about it in this way.
No, not as an enabler.
And also, I think sometimes we try to say, no, that's far too complicated. To try to say internal communication can have all of these outcomes, I'm going to call them. There are many outcomes that I've just talked about there. And actually, no, that's far too complicated for us to get our heads around in internal communication. What we do is actually very simple. We just communicate in ways that helps an organisation perform. So there's this connection between internal communication and performance. And that's really, we don't want to be thinking about all these things like well-being or belongingness or identification, values, purpose. That's just a distraction to the internal communication process. Because, by the way, internal communication people have got a lot on their hands already. So trying to say we should be thinking about all these other things is a distraction and a complication. And I'm going to say, that's an oversimplification.
Right, okay.
What's the point of talking about internal communication? It's only about performance if your employees are disengaged. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're not going to have a very healthy or high-performing organisation. You could be communicating about performance all the time, but if your employees are thinking, this is a really toxic culture and I'm not engaged at all with the way it's going on, that communication about performance is going to completely fall flat.
Yes.
So it's not a single thing. And I think that's the challenge for internal communication today. It must embrace this wider remit and actually say that that's not something that's going to cause us problems. It's actually an opportunity for us to really become trusted, important, strategic operators inside an organisation.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And what you're talking about, it's making me think what we need is actually sustained or sustainable performance. You could have one great year by flogging everyone to death. They're not going to be there necessarily the second year round. Oh, there'll be more mistakes, there'll be more incidents, there'll be more quality issues and all the rest of it. I guess what I'm thinking at a macro level, I'm seeing lots of studies that show there's going to be this massive scarcity of talent by about 2030, 2035. And I'm wondering whether that's going to subtly shift the relationship between the employee and the employer. Because is the employer going to have to think, I mean, they already are, aren't they? They're thinking about their employee value propositions. Every client wants one of those or wants to update the one that they've got. And so my little theory, and it is only a little theory, is that the best performing, and I'm going to use that word, but in performing in every way, the best organisations are going to be the ones that have this interesting relationship with their employees where they're almost a little bit like partners in the process, in the endeavour. That's my personal theory. I love it, but I don't know. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I think partner is one way of describing that relationship. For organisations to think that their employees are partners in what the organisation is trying to achieve is actually quite a mind shift for a lot of leaders. It is a
massive mind shift, I know, but I think that's maybe where we're going. Time will tell, I guess. This episode of the Internal Comms podcast is sponsored by Work Vivo. Now, if you work in internal communications, you know how hard it is to keep everyone aligned, especially when communication is spread across disconnected tools. It makes campaigns harder to run, and it's even harder to see what is actually landing. That's where Work Vivo comes in. Work Vivo is an AI-native employee experience platform that brings communication, culture, knowledge, and measurement into one connected space, helping communicators reach every employee from HQ to the front line. and measure the impact that they're making. So join some of the world's biggest brands shaping their culture with WorkVivo. To learn more, simply visit workvivo.com. That's WORKVIVO.com. Martin, when we spoke in preparation for this show, you talked about that as practitioners, we often start in the wrong place. We go straight to the message, straight to the content. What should our first step be as internal comms professionals? And how can we stop ourselves sort of leaping straight to the bright, shiny tactics?
Yeah, and let's give ourselves a break, because people leap to content messaging. Which channels are we going to use? Because they're time poor.
Yeah.
Or they're not allowed to have the think time
Yes.
to be able to really work out what we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
Internal stakeholders want to see action.
Yes.
And they want to see it quick. And going back to what I said about digital channels and the ubiquity of those and the availability of those means that they know that things can happen quickly.
Yes.
It's happened before for other people in the organisation.
Yes.
So I want some of that too.
I want some of that,
So
yeah.
I think, let's take it easy on ourselves. But if you want to start in the right place, that's really about really understanding what it is that you're trying to do. So some research, setting some clear objectives that fall out of that research, identifying the different stakeholder groups inside the organisation. There is no stakeholder group called all staff or all employees. There just isn't one, right? Although, I know that in some organisations there is a group like that because that's how the channels work.
Yeah.
But who is it that you're trying to speak to? Are there different things that you want to say to different people in the organisation? Managers, for example, people who are on the front line, technicians, people like that. So it's really thinking about those bits up front before you even get anywhere near the content and the messaging and the channels. If you do that, you are likely to have a much better outcome. But as I say, we're often under pressure to deliver quickly. We're all familiar with the request that comes at 5 o'clock on a Friday night. Can you just make this happen next Monday?
Yeah.
And what do? You just default to the things that you've done before using the channels and the platforms that you've already had. And you might even recycle some messaging from something else that you've done previously, because that's all the time you've got to do to create it. So, you really need to take a step back first and really think about what it is that you're trying to do.
Just out of curiosity, do you still use the old know, feel, do framework? Do you still use that? Yeah, so do I.
Think, feel, do.
Think, feel, do. Oh, well, there was a debate, wasn't there?
There was a big debate.
Do we
about
put
that.
do first?
Yeah.
I know that's how we get our kicks.
But if you think about
communicators.
it, Katie, it's a journey.
Yes. Yes.
You turn the news on these days, and you'll hear countless stories about people trying to create awareness about something. Awareness gets you nothing on its own.
Yeah.
There's got to be that second part of the journey which takes people into some kind of understanding about what that awareness is about, or what that thing is about. And it's only when you've got awareness and understanding that you can actually start to maybe shift attitudes, beliefs, all those sorts of things, because those are the things that you really need to shift for people to actually do something differently in the action.
Yes.
And just because employees, for example, just because employees are aware of something and understand something, doesn't necessarily mean to say that they're going to do anything.
No, exactly.
So you really need to understand what is it that you're trying to do by creating that awareness and understanding. Is it some kind of persuasion? Because that's usually what we're trying to do in a change situation. We're trying to persuade people that this new way of doing something is better than what we were doing before, perhaps. And therefore, there are these benefits that fall out of that. But if people are fundamentally opposed to something, they're not going to do it for you. But that goes back to audience insight and audience understanding, which is part of that initial process of working out what you're trying to do and who you're trying to speak to, but also the attitudes and beliefs that you're trying to shift.
Very, very helpful. It's a neat segue to my question for you, Kevin, which is around data. When we spoke in preparation again for this show, you said the trouble with IC folk is they hear the word data and they think measurement. And it's so much broader than that. When you think data, what goes through your mind?
Well, first of all, I like data. So, I find data interesting for all the reasons that Martin's just been talking about, because I think data helps you to understand your stakeholder groups. And I think that's the start of the process. Understanding what your stakeholder groups are thinking and feeling is the way you build an effective internal communication plan. So data can tell you how to target, prioritize stakeholder groups, first of all. It can tell you what the current situation is inside the organisation.
Yes.
And therefore, Martin talked just a second or two ago about building objectives into internal communication plans. So something we've been talking about for a long time, on the courses that we run. And it is something that I know many practitioners struggle with for good reason. And I understand this completely. But if you don't have measurable objectives at the start of your internal communication plan, well, A, you can't do measurement anyway.
No.
But B, then you're not really, you haven't really put the time into thinking about what you want to achieve.
Yes.
In that plan.
Yeah.
And by achieve, I do not mean, produce X amount of content that's going to get, 1,000 likes or have 2,000 views on a video.
That's success, Kevin. Eyes on. Eyes on.
It is.
Eyes on, bums on. That's success, right?
Well, I remember, I'm not going to say where, but I was at an awards ceremony. I think this is going back a little while. It was, an interesting event. And I was sat at the table with one of the award winners who had got, an amazing award for the campaign that they'd run, which was heavily based on producing video content. And when the person came back to the table, I said, well, it's incredible. You had 5,000 views on your video. What was your objective when you started out? She said, I don't know, but whatever it was, we smashed it. I said, okay, so I get this, right? I understand that that's the world we live in, and measuring the number of views, hits, downloads, opens, and so on is part of the process. It doesn't tell you what employees are really thinking or doing with the content.
No.
10,000 people could have watched a video and thought it wasn't very good. So this is where we are. And I think this is the point of this is where I think data helps. And data can actually inform the objectives by helping you to create objectives that measure outcomes and impact.
Yes.
Rather than just outputs, which is what we often talk about. But it also, so that's a measurement use. But to get back to your question, I think data can provide insights.
Yes.
That lead to creativity.
I totally agree.
I mean, there's a lot of people, I think, who are very good and don't often get the credit they should. People who work in internal communications who are actually quite good at data and join the dots is what looking at data, thinking one thing, and then looking at another piece of data and saying, "Oh, that's interesting." Those two parts of the data I've never really thought about before, and that's where creativity comes from. So I prefer to talk about creativity through data and insights than creativity that is about designing a nice poster. Don't get me wrong, I love a poster,
well,
or whatever, but it's only part of the process.
But I would argue that, and we argue this all the time because it's the way that AB is set up, is that we don't get the great creative without the insight. And an obvious example is probably too obvious to mention, but it's health and safety. Until we've got the insight around why certain rules aren't followed, why those accidents keep happening, we can't possibly design the campaign, because otherwise we're going to be designing a campaign for the organisation down the road, a very vanilla standard thing that doesn't speak directly to the people we need to speak to. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more.
I think we're in a really exciting time when it comes to data.
Yes.
Because, AI unlocks so much potential for internal comms
one
people.
Thing it's good at.
Yeah, it's good at analysing data.
Yeah.
Forget all this chat that we've got about content and, you know, writing stuff and everything, yeah, maybe the writers are going to lose their jobs out of AI or something like that. But actually, the people that are going to retain their jobs, and perhaps where the creation of jobs is going to be in internal comms, is actually data and insight, and data analysis and insight.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we've all done surveys in the past of employees, and we've, you know, thought, oh, it'd be really great to put some free text comments boxes in, and we'll let them have their say. And then 3,500 people reply to this survey. You've got 7,000, 8,000 comments to go through, and you're thinking, flipping out, that wasn't such a great idea. Look at all this work that I've got to do now. And then we all end up doing word cloud. Oh, we did end up doing word clouds and things. Do you remember?
Yeah.
You do a word cloud, and something to come out. It'd say, it would say, I don't know, salary would be the biggest thing, and everybody go, oh dear, we're not paying enough, or we're paying too much, or you know, everybody's unhappy about their pay. That's not an insight.
No,
that is just a way of processing that information from a convenience point of view, because actually there wasn't anything else to do it other than pouring through every single one, coding it like we used to do. We'd code it and group it, and then we'd analyse the groups and everything. Now you get Copilot, push the button, and it's done.
Yeah.
You know, and we're using that now where I'm working at the moment. We're using it to analyse that sort of information, seeing what it pulls out for us. It's much more powerful, much more powerful, and it really gives you the insight and the ability to really get to the heart of what the problem is, what people are thinking.
Yeah.
And that informs, of course, the next sort of set of communications that you do.
This is essential issue and risk analysis inside organisations. You know, by doing that analysis of what people are saying, not only in surveys, but you can do the same on, you know, the digital platforms where people are posting comments. You use AI to analyse that. You know, I mean, the obvious thing is sentiment analysis, but more importantly, you can start to pick up little issues.
Oh, totally, 100%.
And that's invaluable.
Organisations have been doing this for years with customers.
Yes, exactly.
You know, they've invested, you know, so much money in customer insight and everything, and you know, from a marketing point of view and everything. You know, employees, well, no, we ain't got the money to do that.
Yeah.
But now, okay, you don't really need the money. You've got the tools.
Yeah.
So in some ways, there's no excuse for not doing it, I think.
I mean, this is where I get excited about AI. That the potential for data analysis is incredible, and you know, and for internal communication people, that is going to enable them, I think, to take on a much more strategic role, or a broader strategic role.
Yeah,
it adds something to their bow to be able to take on the responsibility for doing data analysis of sentiment and other things that are going on. I think it's hugely exciting. But
I agree.
It's just the challenge, Katie. I think, and I'm conscious. I'm talking to hundreds of internal communication practitioners who'll be listening to this podcast, and I think the challenge is, in my experience, because I talk to students all the time about this. I mean, people who go into internal communication don't naturally have a scientific or a mathematic or a data background.
Yeah.
They tend to be people who like to write copy or run great events. And therefore, saying that, you know, have a look at this piece of data analysis is not something they run towards. And I understand that completely.
Yeah.
I mean, to be brutally honest, my background is in, you know, arts. You know, I'm not a scientist. I had to learn it when I did my PhD. I was forced by my supervisor, Mary Welsh, bless her. She was really good at this. She was supportive but pushy. She made me go and learn how to do data analysis. So it is possible, and I think it's just being open to the opportunities that does provide.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're moving into a world potentially where, and this is where it could get really exciting, where we become predictive. So we can then start to see, I'm getting feedback, and my spidery senses through my insight work and my listening work and my analysis of what everyone's thinking and feeling and saying we're going to have a problem over here because I've seen these warning signs before and I'm recognising a pattern. And then we get to be really, really valuable to our organisations.
Yeah, and that's where it's not just the data analysis, which I think you're right, it can be really good at predictive analysis.
Yeah.
But the combination of internal comms people with their experience and their judgment and their knowledge making sense or being interpreters of the data that's being provided.
Yes.
That combination is extremely powerful. There's no one else in the organisation who I think has got the capability to bring that experience of doing internal comms and add it to the predictive data analysis that AI can provide. It's a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, it's really exciting. There's a great chapter in the book called Making Content Work. We've talked a lot about all the work that you need to do before you get to the content, but let's dive into content because we all love it. What does that phrase mean to you, making content work?
I so wanted to write this chapter. When Kevin asked me, I thought, we've got to have something. And originally, what was it called? The show was called Messages and Narratives or something.
Yeah, something.
And I started writing it and started to try and frame it around messages and narratives. And I thought, no, that's really not working. It really is more about making content work. So that's how the chapter ended up being called that. But I think we get very bogged down in internal comms by thinking about the aesthetics of things, and when somebody says we need some really engaging content for this, can you come up with something? So immediately people's minds leap to infographics and diagrams, and maybe we'll do a video or a poster or something like that, and we sort of start to default to that kind of the medium. And the sort of the tactic itself, without really thinking about what content is. What is content? Well, it's things like instructions, guidance, sentiment, even emotion that we're trying to get across to people. And our job is to try and package all of that up. They're the building blocks of communication, really. They're the building blocks of content. What we're trying to do is package all of that up into things like a podcast, for example. We're having a discussion here. We're exchanging facts, ideas, theory, all that sort of stuff. So that's what we're really looking at, is those building blocks and trying to pull those together into the best way to convey the message that all of those things combined kind of deliver for us into a channel or a tactic or something, a podcast, a poster or something like that. So in the book, I've been to South Africa quite a few times, and a few years ago I was there and I saw some rock paintings on the wall, and on the wall, these caves that are in the Drakensberg Mountains, incredible things. They're thousands of years old. And I started looking at these things and I'm thinking, what on earth does that mean? What were they trying to convey with that, with that image, with that scene? And it's really about, it's really about those things like, how to kill an animal.
Yes, that's
how to kill
survive.
An animal. How to be spiritual, because there's a great spirituality to these paintings. How to how to pass on skills and knowledge to the next generation, and not in a written way, in an oral tradition. So that really got me thinking about what content is and how to convey it. And then of course we go into storytelling, don't we? So there's storytelling and how to do that really well. And that's essentially what pictures like that are trying to do. They're trying to tell a story. But storytelling, that's a whole other topic that we probably haven't got time to get into today. But content is really about those building blocks and how you bring those together. It's not about the tactic that it goes into. It's also not about the aesthetics of the thing. I think how it looks. That's more about creativity, I think. It's not really content, it's creativity. But the other thing as well, of course, that we get very bogged down with is sign-off. doesn't sign off drive content, you know?
Yeah.
And even if it's the written word, for example, it goes through, we're constantly thinking, how am I going to get this past so-and-so?
Exactly
because
right.
they're going to sign it off.
Exactly right.
That's completely the wrong way to think about it. It's not
Yes.
it's not being written for them.
No.
It's being written for employees.
Yes.
So it's really, really trying to address the employee's needs with that piece of content, not the person that's signing it off. But we get so bogged down in sign off doom loops.
Yeah.
Where it goes round 3 layers of sign off around 15 stakeholders, and by the time we get it back, it's just completely been stripped of all of its meaning.
It's alphabet spaghetti.
Yes.
Yes, I totally agree. You're reminding me of what Steve Crescenzo says. We write for the approver and not the audience so often in internal comms, and it's so true. I think I was telling this story actually at a workshop with a very big IC team just this week, and I was saying one of my favourite stories was a very senior internal comms practitioner who got in the back of a cab to get something signed off by her chief executive, a brand new magazine that was very tabloid-esque. They'd done the research, and what everyone was reading in their breaks was like the Take a Break tabloid magazine, those news weekly ones. Mm. And she got in the back of the cab with him on his way to a meeting. She said, before I show it to you, you're not going to like it, and it isn't for you. And right, okay then. But that's the point, isn't it? It's like it's as long as it's factually right, style, tone, all of those things, it's got to be written for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So again, it's about that. It's about that taking a step back, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
You know, taking a step back and really thinking about what it is that you're trying to do.
Yeah.
What is it that you're trying to get across to people, without even still starting to think about what's the right way to do that to start off with.
Yeah. And I think what you said early on about, is it an instruction? Is it something morale boosting? What is the feeling I'm trying to communicate with this? I mean, we all want dialogue, but if there's a fire in the building, we don't want dialogue. We want a clear instruction. So everything for the moment, and trying to understand what is this moment here.
Yeah.
I think that's.
If you go back to the sort of think, feel, do thing,
yes,
the
exactly.
the middle bit's feel, which is kind of about understanding and that sort of thing. So, but if you go to a senior leader and say, what is it that you want people to feel as a result of reading this piece of information? They'd probably look at you like you were crackers. In those relationships that we build with leaders to be able to get things signed off, it's often more helpful to have that more honest conversation about what is it that we're trying to do here, and what feelings are we trying to create in the audience? What do we want them to understand? What do we want them to do? It's not really about whether you find it acceptable to sign this off because the words are acceptable to you, or the way that it looks is acceptable to you.
No, that makes perfect sense. We've talked about leaders a little bit here, but let's really kind of focus in on leadership communication. It's a stubborn problem, and I don't know who wants to take this first, but what can communicators do inside their own organisations to improve the way that leaders communicate? And that's a very, very big question, I know. But imagine I've rocked up inside a new organisation. I've got a leadership team. I can see some weaknesses. What maybe should my first step be in that situation?
Kevin is the leadership comms expert.
Well, I mean, of course, I come at it from more of an academic perspective. Martin will, I'm sure.
I'll tell you what I think in a minute. You go first.
Let's have the theory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we'll get to the reality. Well, I think from my point of view, if I were going into a new organisation and sort of looking to support the leadership team in their communication, I'd want to make it clear to them that communication is a personal responsibility that they have, first and foremost.
Yeah.
I can support them. I can coach them. I can guide them on the best approach. But by the way, I'm not writing a speech. If you want me to write a speech, or if you want me to ghostwrite a blog or a briefing, then I'm not going to do it. And now that, I'm sure that's probably career ending for many people. But
98% of listeners and viewers at this point are going, well, I just did that 5 minutes ago.
This is why he doesn't work in house anymore.
Exactly. Well, that's exactly right. But, you know, the realities will be different. And of course, in practice, I'm sure that wouldn't get me very far. But that, in honesty, that's where I would be. That's my view. That's my philosophy on their role. And then, you know, I think the other thing I would be stressing is, you know, you're not perceived, or employees don't think of you as all-knowing gods. You know, they want to see you as people who resonate with them, and they want to hear things in clear human language, not corporate gobbledyspeak.
Yeah.
So that'd be the other thing. And then the third thing I'd say is, by the way, you have to listen as much as you speak.
Yeah.
So that would be my approach.
Yeah.
In fact, you know, I have tried a couple of times in the past, and it didn't go down very well. And so I moved on to a different part of this was in BT. And I moved on, you know, to be a business partner for a different director.
Yes.
So, you know, I mean, the reality is leaders, I think, will either respond to that, or they will say, no, you know, that's not my perception of leadership, and I'm going to do leadership my way. That's the reality. And I think, you know, the reason why many leaders don't really fully understand what good leadership communication is because no one's really ever told them.
Right.
And they just go with their instinct.
Yes.
And their instinct can be sometimes catastrophically wrong.
Yeah.
And I think it's our role as internal comms people to point that out.
Yes.
In the best possible way, of course.
And I think the point about listening, though, is so important, because this can sound like a conversation where you're getting leaders to do something, to do more, to fit more in their diaries, to have more events or town halls or conversations. And it can feel like it's all in the benefit of the workforce, but not for them. Whereas if you can shift it slightly to say, if you want to be a great leader of this organisation, there's probably some knowledge, some insight, some innovation, some collaboration you need to unlock. And the only way you're going to do that and be really effective is to know what's going on in the minds of the people that are working for you. I don't know whether that would get me very far with many leaders.
Well, no, but I think it's so true. I think senior leaders are grappling with really serious problems about performance, and so on. The irony is, unlocking the solution to a lot of those performance problems can be helped through good internal communication.
Yes,
it's just that leaders don't really understand that point.
Yeah.
And this is back on us as internal comms people. We've got to prove to them that the role that they take on can actually contribute to solving some of their problems.
Yes.
They just have to listen to us as internal comms people, as well as employees.
Yes. And we need to be that strategic advisor.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
I've only ever worked with one leader in my entire career, over 25 years, who said that it is my main responsibility is to communicate.
Really?
Yeah. Only one person in all that time. And he was a great communicator, very charismatic, able to build a connection with people, had a lot of empathy, which I know is something that you touched on with your listening research. But that's the only person that ever sort of said that's my main responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, when I teach a couple of times a year at Cranfield University to a bunch of folk who run businesses, smaller businesses, and I sort of say, look, the bad news is, I think in 2026, leadership is communication, unfortunately. Maybe that's just because of the way that we run our organisations now. You talked about the channels, they're always on, they're always there. How do we get things done inside an organisation? Whether internal comms exists or not, everyone, everywhere is having conversations.
Yes.
There might not be the right ones at the right time, and that's what we're there to do. But you're not going to get much done without a bit of communication going on inside your organisation.
When we were researching the book, we discovered that some organisations are using leader avatars, AI-generated
really?
avatars,
Interesting.
to do town halls and things.
Really?
And I said to you, how does that even work? You know, and how would employees even tolerate that? It's sort of, I mean, okay, it was in the tech world,
Yeah.
so you know they're always at the forefront of things like that and everything. But to my mind, from a leadership point of view, that's abdication of responsibility.
Yeah.
Really, you know, get the bot to do it because I haven't got time or something. Okay, you know, maybe it's something to do with, you know, leaders not being able to be all places at all at the same time. So maybe there's something there in having a cloned version of yourself, so you can make some big announcement, you know, all at the same time, you know, in every place. But you know, I just wonder, you know, in the organisation that I work in at the moment, which is a university, how people would react to that. You know, what would they actually think? Would they even, you know, I can imagine this huge amount of consternation.
Yeah, I mean, we'll put a link to it in the show notes because I think it's interesting. And I think it's a French chief executive, a woman who used AI to speak to people in every country her organisation was in around a change, and said up front, I don't speak Korean, I don't speak Spanish, but you're going to get a version of me speaking directly to you. And I think if it's done with that kind of transparency and candour, I can understand it. Like, for example, a chatbot on a website, as long as it's not pretending to be a human being, we're fine. But I think your point is, if it's supposed to be a human being, it really should be a human being. Yes. Otherwise, you've completely broken trust.
Yes.
And for me, this all comes back, and I know for Kevin, it does for you as well. It all comes back to trust. Trust is at the heart of a lot of this, isn't it?
Well, yeah, if we go back to belongingness, which is where we started in terms of your question, then, you know, you don't feel that you belong somewhere if you can't trust the manager you work for or the leaders who run it.
Yes.
So trust does play a big part in, I think trust for me, you know, it's an interesting concept. And I think we're going to hear more about trust. You know, someone said to me the other day, oh, employee engagement is dead. It's all about trust now.
Oh.
But, you know, I don't think employee engagement is dead. It's been around for too long, and, you know, anyway, but I do think trust is because of all the reasons we've been talking about today, trust is something that we will talk about a lot more. But for me, trust is about doing. I mean, trust comes from, you know, the say do. It's the doing what you say.
Yes.
And then that's where trust comes from. But, you know, there's still an element of hearing what someone says and trusting in what they say, which is true. But the real trust comes from the action afterwards.
Yes.
But I think, go back to the AI thing, I think this is an interesting conversation. But I think, Katie, you sort of nailed it really. If someone is producing an avatar to be communicating, I think it'd be okay if they said, the reason why you're seeing me today as an avatar is X, Y, or Z.
Yes.
Yes.
Then, you know, it's about the context of that. But if then every time they were due to do a monthly briefing,
And it was,
you know, that falls a bit flat.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
it's an interesting context, but I think it's all about authenticity and other words we hear banded around a lot. But it's the way that things like that are explained. But the real issue for me here, and this is some research we did for the listening organisation book, and, you know, someone looked at this for us when we were writing the book. The syllabi of a lot of major MBAs,
Yes.
and leadership development courses pays very little attention to internal communication.
Yes.
So you can't really blame leaders if they've been through MBAs and been through, you know, leadership development processes, and no one on those courses has really ever explained the value of internal communication and then explained the best way to do it.
Yes.
So this gives internal communication managers a real challenge, because, you know, they have to persuade or coach or guide senior leaders through a number of different ways. You know, either their personal relationship is the way they do it, or they try to do it through, you know, data and showing, you know, or other mechanisms. But you're you're not really going in with and talking to someone who's already open to.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah,
it's so true.
Interesting data from Gallagher that we cite in the book about, how often leaders listen to their internal communicators. Happily, it feels like it's the majority from that data, but there is a significant proportion of internal communicators who report that their leaders, senior managers, don't listen to them, don't take their advice, or if they do, they don't actually do anything about it.
Oh, I see.
They just continue to do their own thing,
right,
so to speak. So somehow that for me is about the relationship that the internal comms person has with the leadership team.
Yeah.
So, have you got permission, access to them to be able to build that proper working relationship with them? So they do take your advice more frequently. But I've worked in organisations where, I've had to deal with leaders through personal assistants.
Yes.
I wasn't important enough to be granted access to the inner sanctum of the CEO or anything. So, I had to get feedback via somebody else. So, sometimes it's difficult to build that relationship.
Yeah.
But if there is a healthy relationship between the internal comms team and the leadership team, then I think the internal comms in that organisation is often much more effective.
Yes. I completely agree with you.
Just to chip in on this, there's from an academic perspective, there's very little research that's being done into what chief executives expect from internal communication. There is a study going on at the moment. It's in Spain. I'll happily put it into the podcast notes because you can read the journal article online. Some interviews being done in Spain with chief executives on their expectations from internal communication. And it's very interesting because they're not talking solely about helping them achieve their performance objectives. They're talking about employee engagement.
Are they really?
All these sorts of things, yes. So they understand that internal communication's got this broader role that I was sort of hinting at the beginning of this conversation. But I'd love to see more research.
I agree
on that.
I agree. I mean, one of the first questions, if I'm allowed to do it in what we do our acid test audit, one of the first questions I love to ask a management team individually one-on-one is, what is the biggest business problem that internal comms should be solving for you right now? That's such an important question. And then that gets them thinking already, I thought you were going to get me to sign off a message. No, I'm not interested in you signing off a message. What's keeping you up at night at the moment, and what can we help to fix? I've got a quality problem here, or I'm just about to merge with so-and-so, or whatever it is. Yeah. Completely agree. There's one burning question I've got to ask before we get to the quick fire questions. Are we a profession, Martin?
Nearly. I think is the political answer. Profession is one of those words that trips off the tongue so frequently in conversations that we have about our industry.
Yes.
We talk about professions and professionals and so on. And if you think about it, what is a profession? What are the characteristics of a profession? Naturally, in the research for the book, there actually is no universally accepted definition of a profession.
Oh, okay.
But there are certain characteristics that some professions have. For example, more formal professions like medicine, the law, those sorts of lines of work. So, there's got to be a body of knowledge. So, research-based, and in internal comms, thanks to people like Kevin, we've got a huge base of knowledge now. Just thinking about all the books that have been published recently on internal comms, as we talked about Bill Quirk being the only one that was around when we were sort of back in the day. But there's a huge range of books now, so there's a definite body of knowledge there. The other one is sort of working in line with a code of conduct. So that might be an ethical code of conduct or a practice code of conduct. And we have those in internal comms, but they are not universal.
No.
There's also a commitment to professional development.
Yes.
And whether that's qualifications or it's continuous professional development. And actually, in research for the book, it's disappointing that on the face of it, there are so few internal communicators that engage in CPD, meaningful CPD. And then the last one is really membership of a professional body. If you're a doctor or a lawyer, you can't practice unless you're a member of a professional body.
You need a license, yes.
You need a license, yeah.
Yes,
and
yes.
Actually, if you don't adhere to the code of conduct,
Yep,
you get kicked out, basically, or you're in front of a regulator of some kind.
Yeah.
So for those reasons, we are not really a profession. That doesn't mean to say that we can't be professional.
Oh, good.
And part of the chapter that I've written about all of this is called professionalisation. So we can choose as individuals to acquire the attributes of a professional. We can work within, we can be a member of a professional body, we can adhere to a code of practice, we can get qualified if we choose to do that. And we can also, be really interested in the research that's going on and try and apply that in the practice and the work that we do. So really at the moment, it's more a case of, are you willing to be a professional as an internal communicator, or do you just have a job in internal comms?
Interesting.
But I don't think that we're ever going to get to the state of being able to claim that we're a profession until more people start to acquire the characteristics of a true professional, and then we will be there. But again, highlighting the book, that I think there is a massive gap between what professional bodies say that we need to know and understand and actually be able to do, and the way that we behave, and what employers and hiring managers look for. Because almost, exclusively, they do not look for people who are qualified. They don't look for people who are interested in continuous professional development.
Yes.
They don't look for people who are members of professional bodies.
Right.
So we just did a little bit of analysis, didn't we, for that chapter, and we looked at about 150 job descriptions. This is sort of back, sort of early 2025. And there were very, very few.
Interesting.
Less than, say, 3% or so that actually asked for any professional qualifications. Okay, they might ask for a degree in a relevant subject, but that's not the same thing.
No.
But membership of a professional body, not even registered.
Wow.
Continuous professional development, I think that was mentioned in one of the job descriptions. So employers are not looking for the things that we're actually upskilling ourselves in, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So, and that gap is another reason that's holding us back from becoming a true profession. We're doing a really good job, I think, on the supply side. Kevin and I are involved in trying to get people to take qualifications. Professional bodies doing a great job on that as well. There's loads of training in the sector now that you can avail yourself of, some really good quality stuff. But supply side's one thing. It's the demand side that we need to look at. That's a difficult nut. That's a difficult nut to crack. But I don't really see, from the point of view of professional bodies, for example, I don't really see them engaging in that space.
Right. Okay.
In a way that is really robust. So people are looking for experience, and that's it.
I'm curious. I've met so many people over the years, particularly on this show, who say, I fell into internal communication. We were doing one thing and then they sort of were drawn into it and then discovered they loved it and that's why they stayed. But because you obviously teach people quite early on in their careers, are you finding that people are now making an active decision to be in internal comms much more rather than this falling into it?
Yeah, I think so. For sure.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
Public relations. People would go into a broad public relations role and then they do a little bit of internal communication as part of that role and find that that's the bit that they really like. And then they sort of look to try and find a dedicated internal communication role.
Right.
So that is nearly all of the students who study with BR Academy on the internal communication diploma. I would say that's the case. Although you still have some people who coming from operational backgrounds.
Nice. Okay.
Who have seen the importance, some project change managers.
Yes, I can bet.
Who can see the importance of. So there is still movement from other parts of the organisation.
I think marketing is still a lot of people start off in marketing, and kind of move over into sort of employee communication. So but I also think that internal communication as a job is much more visible now.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, in organisations.
Yes,
and more broadly.
Yeah.
So because it is more visible, it can be a more conscious choice for some people.
That makes sense.
I know one student who, going back when we first started the internal communication certificate, I think it was 2010, something like that, 11. And I can remember one student who came on that course and wasn't really sure where to take their career. They wanted to do a broad communication role, and they decided, I'm going to really focus on internal communication. So we're going 16 years ago now. I'm not going to say who this person is, but they've really stuck at that internal communication role and now become a director of internal communication.
Wow.
And really flourished, having made that choice back 16 years ago. And I mean, 16 years is not that long, but at that time, it was still not really completely seen as a good, dedicated internal role to have.
No.
I think that is changing.
I think that
it is changing.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's good to hear. This episode of the Internal Comms podcast is brought to you by my very own Friday update. Would you like a short email from me, never more than just 5 bullet points long, giving you my take on the week's news from across the world of communications? This might be the latest reports, books, campaigns, conferences that have caught my eye during the week. I always limit myself to just 5 nuggets of news so you can read it in record time, but still feel hopefully a little bit more informed and a little bit more uplifted as you end your week. Now, this is subscriber content only, which was initially intended just for AB colleagues and clients. I don't post this content anywhere else. So you do need to sign up, but that is super easy. Simply go to abcom, that's abcom.co.uk/Friday. We just need your email address. And it is equally easy to unsubscribe anytime. So why not give it a go? That sign up page again, abcom.co.uk/Friday. And if you do choose to be a subscriber, I very much look forward to being in touch. Let's head over to those quick fire questions in the short time we have left. Each of you have one myth about internal communications that you can banish forever. Is there a myth you'd like to banish?
Into room 101. Go on, Kevin, you go first.
Oh, okay. The myth that I would like to banish is that line managers and supervisors are the biggest problem in the internal communication process. I've seen this reported several times.
You don't believe it?
It's not the case. No, they're not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is senior leaders.
Right, okay.
As we've already covered.
Cool.
Of course. No, I do get this right. So there are some line managers and supervisors who are truly terrible at communicating with their teams. But when you do the research on scale,
right,
which I've done, employees rate line managers generally much, much higher for communication than they do senior leaders.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Poor senior leaders. We haven't been very kind to them.
No, we haven't. That's fair enough.
True.
What's your myth that you'd banish?
Seats at the table.
Oh, let's get rid of seat. There's so many people sat at this table. I know.
Yeah. Boardroom would be a very crowded place.
It's a very crowded,
if we all had seats at the table.
Yeah.
I think in my entire career, again, I think I've only ever, in 2 jobs, I think I've ever had a seat at a kind of a senior decision-making table, really.
Yeah.
And I think constantly banging on about that just sets people up to fail.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I loved Shell Holtz when he was on the show. He said, I don't want to sit at the table. I just want to be the person they call before they go into the room and sit at the table. I thought
you just need
that's why you're Shell.
You just need to, you know, have credibility.
Yes.
And you know, sort of be persuasive, and you know, the real decisions don't happen at the boardroom table.
No, yes, actually, that's very true.
You know, and if we inhabit the corridors of organisations and places like that.
Exactly.
That's where you have influence. As an internal communicator, not at the boardroom.
So true.
Usually last on the agenda before AOB, right?
Exactly.
That's where comms comes.
Always.
That's our slot, right?
Yes, our slot.
The penultimate slot.
Which we never get to because we run out of time.
Exactly.
What's one career lesson that comms folk only really learned through experience, do you think?
I would say that internal communication is not the same in every organisation.
Yeah.
And that can be a little bit revelatory to some people.
Yeah.
Particularly, and it also be quite frustrating as well if you end up in a place that actually doesn't think about internal comms in the way that you do.
Yeah.
And doesn't think it's for the same things that you do.
Yeah.
You know, and I've left organisations because it didn't agree, it didn't align with my beliefs about what internal communication should be for.
Yeah.
So but you only learn that by working in several different places.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It comes back to your earlier question. In this organisation, what are we here for? What do we do? What's our purpose? Yeah. Do you have an all-time favourite quote about communication in general?
It has to go back to, I'm not sure if it's actually something that George Bernard Shaw said or whether it's something that's just been attributed to him. The greatest illusion with communication is the fact that it's been accomplished, you know.
Yes.
So we assume by sending something out, we've communicated. We've just sent something out.
Yes. That assumption that something has been understood.
Right. Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
Mine's Bill Quirk. For internal communication to have value, we must expect it to have some.
So we've got to value ourselves.
We've got to value ourselves. Yeah.
Now, as you know, at the end of the show, you get a billboard. You've both had billboards before. In case you can't remember, Kevin's, yours was open your ears. That was your message on the last billboard. And Martin was release your inner skeptic. Do you want to update your billboards at all?
I don't know. I think open your ears, I think still resonates for me. And actually the book cover kind of plays to that. I don't. That wasn't a serious reason for it, but I mean, I hope people like the book cover. By the way, it's caused quite a bit of a stir in terms of.
We've had so many conversations about this book cover. It was
but as you say, it's listening. So
so open your ears, and I think that's not just about listening. You know, it's also the problem with it is, of course, is that it doesn't really go into proper listening because you have to not just open your ears, you have to open your mind. Exactly.
As we know.
I'm going to stick with it for now.
That's the fifth time you're going to appear on the show to talk about that. I can't wait. Martin, your billboard?
I'm kind of sticking.
Good.
But slightly adapting.
Go on.
Because I think scepticism is something that we need ever more in the sort of world that we're in at the moment. We need a questioning mind.
Yes.
To Kevin's point, open your mind, really.
Yeah.
So release your inner skeptic more often.
More often. Love it. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a great conversation.
You're welcome, Katie.
Thank you, Katie.
Pleasure.
Thanks. So that is a wrap for this episode of the Internal Comms podcast. For the show notes, head over to AB's website. That's abcomm.co.uk. You will also find there our entire back catalogue of more than 120 episodes. I can pretty much guarantee there's one for almost every internal comms challenge you might be facing at the moment. My thanks to Kevin and to Martin. My thanks also to the dream team behind the scenes at AB, to Freddie, Amir and Joe. And finally, of course, my thanks to you for tuning in. This show would be nothing without you. So until we meet again, lovely listeners, stay safe and well. And remember, it's what's inside that counts.